this year coming up on the Hebrew calendar. And just be with us now in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Tonight, we have a very special program for you all. We have an interview with people who escaped from China. Here's Eliyahu.
Okay. Okay, friends, it looks like we started out with a technical problem. Let's hope we don't have more tonight, because we have such a special program for you that we want to share. And this is a interview that was done just a couple of days ago, and I've been working like crazy to get this all edited and ready for you, and I've had some great help too. I want to thank both Jude and Solomon for the work they did with me on the video and the support of everybody else around here. Really appreciate it. Let's get right to that video. I'm Eliyahu Ben David, and I have with me two dear friends who very recently had been living in China, and they have quite an amazing story. Welcome, Brian and Ginny.
Thank you.
You were in China quite a long time, the two of you. Could you just give us a little background information of how you ended up in China and what that was all about?
To go back several years, just quickly, we met through the ministry here at Zion, and we got married, attempted to get a green card for Ginny. That wasn't working out very well. Hordes of paperwork. We ended up being separated for 2 years, with her in Thailand and some of that time in the UK. And we were just apart. I was here in the States, and we got tired of that after a couple of years.
Now, why were you apart for so long? Why couldn't you just get together here?
Well, the main issue is that she's British. So when she enters the United States, she's given a visa for 3 months. At which point, beyond that 3 months, she needs to leave the country and then re-enter. Obviously, flights are not cheap, and she had other work responsibilities, so we were just kind of stuck at most seeing each other for 3 months at a time, but usually it was only maybe a couple weeks to a month.
Doesn't the United States government have some kind of a provision for situations like this, so that if you marry someone who's not an American, they can come and join you in your country?
You need to have proof of relationship and proof of financial standing, and a sponsor who'll be responsible for you when you come into the States, and health checks, and full medical. There's just a myriad of hoops that you have to jump through.
Now, as I understand it, though, you had all that and you provided all that to the government like years ago, like 7 years ago or something. So you must have been like waiting a long time to get approval.
Yes, the case was open, and then we were told, we had an immigration lawyer, and we were told that it might take 6 months to a year. But a friend of mine was married to a Thai American man, and he started the application at the same time as me. And within 18 months, his wife was in the US. So I honestly cannot say I have any idea why our application took as long as it did. But it was just sitting. We didn't hear from anyone. And Brian would call like the USCIS, the visa place, and then it would just sit on the phone for an hour, on hold for an hour, and then they would just say like, oh yes, we've got your case and you just have to wait. And So I had no idea what was taking so long.
The truth is, most of that was back during the Obama administration. And at the time, I noticed that we had lots and lots of people coming into the country, immigrating into the country from everywhere in the world except Europe. So I just don't know exactly. Maybe there was a policy or something. But anyway, it went on for quite a long time like this. Why China? Why did you end up in China?
Well, Ginny had been teaching overseas prior to us getting together for many years. And when we got tired of waiting for so long, we just decided, maybe going overseas would be a better idea. She did some investigating, found that there was many jobs open in China because China has been, over the past decade, been opening up more, and schools are a really big thing. So
Right.
we moved into China.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you ended up in China, and that was how long ago?
That would have been in January of 2015.
Okay, January 2015. What was your living situation like?
Well, overall, it wasn't too bad. When we first moved, we were in South China in a city called Guangzhou, and we were pretty happy there. Ginny had a decent job. We had a nice apartment. After a few years, that's where our daughter was born. We were happy. It was difficult in terms of spiritual life because China's not a very spiritually minded country, and there are some Christians there. Messianics are very few and far between. So there was some issues with, physical fellowship with other believers. So we mainly just had to stick with Sabbath meetings and that sort from Zion. But beyond that, in other ways, we were quite happy and comfortable.
So we had this period in which you developed your own family normalcy, I would say, while you were living in China. Yeah. So that was all good. What we're going to do now, friends, is we're going to start developing a timeline of events because things started changing for you guys, right? And where we want to pick this up is when things started to resolve about being able to return to the United States. Do you have a date for that?
That was December. Just gone. December 2019.
Okay, let's write that down. What we're going to do, create kind of a timeline of your experience. Now, you mentioned about your faith. You truly do walk in reverence towards Yahweh and our Messiah, and certainly have been in touch with Zion throughout all of this time, and are a part of our online ministry, participate fully in that. So this is how we know about you guys, right? What we want to show here to folks, Yahweh's hand was in your life, how he got you through a bad situation as things started getting really out of control. And we want to bring that forth because there's a lot of people that are experiencing that right now, and we want to reassure them that Yahweh is with them, and if they trust him, he can lead them through the situation. And I just so see that through what happened with you guys. So let's get to that very important thing, because you never would have been able to leave China to your destination here in America unless you had that green card, right? So what happened with that?
About the year before, so it would have been about December 2018, we decided that we wanted to pick up the process and try and make a move back to a mutual country and have family and believing friends and community around us.
Yes.
So we decided that we had to contact them and in the embassy. I'd started the application in Bangkok. So we contacted them and said, this, what is going on? We want to move back to the States. It's now been 5 years, 7 years, whatever it was. And we want to move. And they said, yeah, come on down. And they sent us a date for an interview for me, for the green card. That was it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So your case had been open all of this time, and now you contacted them again, and all of a sudden it was like green lights everywhere?
Yeah, it was really crazy. We like we said, in December of 2018, we decided that we wanted to get everything started up. There was a few little things we had to talk with our sponsor again and make sure that he had everything in line, but everything just fell exactly into place. And then, we get this date for the interview. And in December of 2019, And we're like, okay, well, that fits in perfectly because of her holiday with school. And
Yeah, to bring that out, we went then because I get a 3-week Christmas holiday. So we thought, we don't know how long the interview will take. I need to have a medical first. So we went to Bangkok for the full 3 weeks. And we were there from December the 17th
I believe so, yeah.
to January the 3rd. And we were just in Bangkok. It wasn't very fun. It wasn't a very nice holiday. But to be honest, the whole process was just very smooth. And then we got a passport back, came back, didn't it? With the green card, the marriage visa in it. And we went to the beach, didn't we, for a week?
Yeah.
And we had a really nice holiday on the beach because Kezia had been cooped up in a hotel room in Bangkok while we were just being dragged to hospitals and the embassy. And
For a lot of people who live in America, this is probably confusing to them right now. They're wondering, well, why would you go to Bangkok to get this from America? Why would you do that?
because you don't apply from America, you apply from wherever you are. Because if you're a foreign spouse.
So you were
you're
dealing with
the
the embassy in Bangkok?
Yes, because I had been in Bangkok living and working there when we first got married. So that's where they pinned it. So we had to come from China to Bangkok.
Okay, so basically you did that. How long before you knew that you actually had your green card?
Well, that was the funny thing. So we did this whole Christmas holiday thing for those 3 weeks. We landed and, started running immediately. And within about a week, we had everything secured and her visa was in her passport and then we had 2 weeks to kill.
Wow.
Yes.
So about what date was that you had your green card?
The interview was on the 19th, I believe, of December 2019. And it was in your passport and back to you within a couple days after that.
I think it was about, the 22nd or 23rd. Because Thailand doesn't shut for Christmas. The government offices work. They only had Christmas Day off. So it was just no big deal. Every day is a work day.
So here you had waited 7 years, and then you go through this thing, and within a month you actually have your green card. And this is at the end of December 2019, just before this year.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So what is the next major event after this that you would put on your timeline?
I would say for us the major event is we had time to kill and we went to the beach. That's for me the major event because we were just having fun and reading news reports of some unknown virus in China that had killed a couple of people.
Wow.
But we're thinking we're on the beach. We didn't have Wi-Fi, did we? We just had a really good holiday.
Yeah.
And then we came back to Bangkok and we flew back. So the next major event would be having low-key media that we knew something was not right, but it was 2 provinces away from us in China, and it wasn't on our radar, really.
So that was about when?
January 3rd, we flew back.
Okay, let's put that on here. January 3rd, first news reports. I just want to comment. I think it's really cool that you had this period before all of this stuff happened where you had a chance to rest and get essentially ready for what was coming, even though you didn't know that's what was happening.
Yeah.
So you get these news reports and you're seeing this is going on. Did it seem like any big deal at all? No. When did this start becoming more serious for you?
We noticed that Wuhan was starting to spike in their cases of the virus. We started, apps were being developed so that we could track the statistics day by day.
Yeah, so this is roughly around the 15th of January?
Roughly right around there, between the 15th and 20th.
Let's put that on, I don't know exactly how you want to put it, beginning of alarm or whatever. How did you respond to that?
Well, at first we didn't take it overly serious. Again, it was a couple provinces away. There had been no cases outside of that province in Hebei, where Wuhan is located. As a matter of fact, we actually went to a friend's house and had a little get-together.
Right.
Yeah, I broke up for Chinese New Year holiday on January 23rd. And then that night, I think it was 23rd, Friday, that night we went to a friend's house and we had dinner, didn't we? And just a fun evening.
Yes.
And I only had this year, for whatever reason, the Chinese New Year was very short. Normally it's much longer, but this time I only had 10 days.
Yes.
So, most of my colleagues had not really gone anywhere. They were all planning to stay because it's a lot to fly out and go somewhere in a 10-day holiday.
Yes.
So we just we even said to them, didn't we? See you later. They live in the same compound as us. So ta-ra, see you later. We'll
arrange something.
We'll get together
Sunday.
for a potluck dinner on a Sunday, didn't we?
Yes.
And went home. And then,
well, because we had broken up on the 23rd, and that was just a couple days after the Chinese New Year had happened for a lot of government offices and the Chinese schools and all of basically the whole country. So we were a little late in breaking up for us, for the Chinese. So they had begun traveling, and there were no travel restrictions at that time within the country. And
So we're saying January 23rd?
was when we broke up.
broke up for Chinese New Year. I think they broke up much earlier than that.
About a
And
week.
broke up means what?
The holidays began.
Yeah.
Yeah, the holidays. Okay, yes.
The holidays began for us, but they had begun about a week before that for the rest of the country, for the Chinese. And during Chinese New Year, it's very well known that it's the largest human migration on the planet, where sometimes just over 1 billion people within the country all change places and go to their hometowns and are on trains, planes, everything. Everyone's moving. And that's when things really exploded in China, because everyone's traveling around.
So that means, for instance, in Wuhan, city was filled with millions of people, right? And then when that was over, these millions of people all were going out to various places throughout China?
Yes.
Yes, because Hubei is the province, and that's very well known for being a centre for technology and factories and things like that. So a lot of Chinese people might have migrated there because work is there. And they only get the Chinese holidays as holiday. It's not like that we have 2 or 3 weeks holiday in our contracts. So as soon as there's a Chinese cultural holiday, that's the only holiday they get. So they go home to see their family. Otherwise, they only see their family like once a year.
What we know now is that it was sometime in December that these cases actually started showing up in Wuhan.
Yeah.
So that was December. Now we're well into January. And then all these people are released out throughout the whole country of China.
Yes.
And then that's when you really saw everything pick up in China. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Virus.
That's right, because we went to my friend's house on the 23rd. We had dinner and we went home. We checked the app for the statistics of the confirmed cases, and it had spiked. And then we said, from that point, it was like another day we were watching, and then we said that we would choose to quarantine and actually not go into the community ourselves. The government hadn't put that on us. We decided that we would do that.
So you were ahead of the government in self-quarantining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably at that point, some people would have thought that was overreacting on your part. Did any of your people feel that way, or anyone around you, when you started doing that? Or maybe they didn't know you were doing it?
No, because we chatted with the people at school, because we'd said on the Friday that we'd see them on Sunday for a potluck dinner, and then we had a message from them saying, "Don't come over. We've decided to self-isolate," and then we said, "Oh, you have? Okay, that's funny," because we had that same conclusion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we'd decided, like, pretty much everyone, and then they weren't going out, so we didn't go out. It was the same thing. Like, there was nobody really going anywhere. It was a very subdued atmosphere.
It sounds like that came on really fast, that situation.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. One thing I would like to mention. So we started self-quarantining, I would say probably on January 25th or 26th. And I was only leaving the house when I either had to walk my dog or go to the shop for groceries, which was once a day, usually first thing in the morning when they opened. I had been doing that same routine for a very long time.
Yes.
Years. And I noticed that one day when I left my house to go to the grocery store one morning, that there was a unusually high presence of police. I didn't think anything of it. Our community is renowned in the city for being very safe, and they sometimes take ridiculous measures, and there's like electrified fences, and it's all a bit much and unnecessary. So I didn't really think anything of it. And then the next day, I noticed that they had set up some roadblocks. And the day after that, they started stopping people at the roadblocks, taking temperatures. And that's when I got stopped for the first time. And I was on my bicycle, and they told me, no, stop. They took my temperature, and then they allowed me through. I was fine. But that's when I started getting very nervous and realizing that the nationals, the Chinese now are taking this much more seriously. And that's when it started to really impact our lives in a more intense way.
What would have happened if they took your temperature and it was too high?
They had published that it was a low-grade fever around, I guess, in the US, 99. We looked that up, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so 37.3 degrees is a low-grade fever. So anything higher than that, they would take you immediately to the government-assigned hospital. Because we can't access any media, and that's not in our language, so we weren't sure, like, what does that mean? Do they even tell the family? I don't know. I mean, we had reports of people having a slightly elevated temperature and then just being taken away by the police, the people that had taken the temperature measure, there and then straight to the government-approved hospital.
And of course, at the hospital, there's a lot of other sick people, some of them no doubt having the virus.
Yeah.
So it increases your risk a great deal to get taken into the hospital, right? Of course, they would do the humane thing and notify the family and so forth that they had taken you, right?
We honestly did not know.
I don't think. I don't know how you would ever know.
So you could have actually just been whisked away and nobody even know what happened?
Well, that was actually kind of an issue with her and I and my family, because when I would go out for groceries, there was that possibility that if I got stopped getting back in, had a high fever, that I just wouldn't come back home.
Whoa.
Yeah. And we did have a discussion that if either of us were in that situation, then we did say that the other was not to visit or not to come to hospital. I don't know if we would even be allowed to, but we decided already that we were not to, because for Keziah's sake. And now we know the statistics show that younger children don't have so much an issue. But at that time, we didn't know that. So we're thinking, she's only 2. She's got, immature immune system.
Yes.
So we were concerned about that, weren't we? So we'd already decided our plan if one of us was taken.
Wow. So this is really interesting. As this thing developed, you talked and communicated about it, and you developed contingency plans. Just thinking about this here in America where I live, the average normal temperature is 98.6. They could have whisked you away at 99. I mean, that's not even an entire degree. So that's amazing. And there's some people, of course, who run a little warmer. There's lots of reasons that could explain such a tiny difference. It's kind of scary that could happen here eventually in other places. Okay, so now things are getting kind of alarming at this point, right?
Fair.
What about the mask? We're all so used to seeing all these masks. Were they introducing that during this period that we're talking about right now, or did that come later?
And they did write it into law. It is law now.
Yes.
You have to wear a mask. But then at the time, they didn't even, but to be honest, they didn't need to write it into law because the Chinese were all wearing them.
They were doing it.
And in fact, to the point where they were absolutely like gold dust to buy.
Yeah.
And then they had to pass laws because people were buying and hoarding and selling overpriced. And it just descended into chaos, didn't it?
Wow.
Because as they made it the law, like for us in our house, thankfully, we had a packet of like, I'd say 200 or so.
That was, funny enough, given to me just haphazardly when I arrived from someone else, another foreigner who was leaving the city, said, here, you know what? I bought these a long time ago. I never used them. Just have them.
So you had this big supply of masks. At what point did you start wearing them?
Once we started self-isolation on about the 25th, 26th, just as an extra precaution, we decided that if we did go out for any reason, we'd wear a mask.
Okay. What would you consider the next big change? More or less, when do you think the next level hit you?
There wasn't a big change next. That's the issue. So that we were in this self-isolation situation, and we were sort of reading the news and looking at the app, and the numbers were going up, but nothing actually changed. So we were just going back and forth every single day. Should we stay in China? Should we leave? Should we quarantine even more? Should Brian stop going out completely? Should we get on a plane? If we get on a plane, will we get the virus? Is it more dangerous? So we were just constantly going backwards and forwards for a week.
Just, we did not know, you know, do we stay or do we go?
Total blindness, total darkness, no idea what to do, and constantly going back and forth because each course of action, so we'd laid out, wait and increase the self-isolation, go and leave on a plane. If you go, where to go back to the UK, that's where I'm from, go back to the States, I do have a green card after all, go back somewhere else, somewhere nearby to wait. And we literally had all these options in front of us, and we just went backs and forwards on them. And it was funny because Brian would look at the numbers and then say, right, that's it, we're going. And then I would talk him down and say, like, no, you're going to end up going. We'll take us all somewhere to the States, and then I'll need to come back 2 days later. Because
at this point, we just really didn't know. We had no idea that it was going to balloon into what it has become.
Exactly. So basically, I see this as where a lot of people are in America right now.
Yes.
Some people are ahead of this position, but where I live, I think a lot of people are in that place where this looks like it's just been totally blown out of proportion, and it's very confusing, all of the things that are happening. People need to make decisions as to what they're going to do, but it's so confusing, it's hard to really decide what to do. Is that basically how it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for us, what we did was we said we laid down criteria, a line that we were not willing to step over. So we talked extensively about what we were comfortable with. So we had said, for us, we had decided that if the UK, US, especially UK, because my company is British and I'm British, if the government starts to recommend travel, or like what we'd say, travel advisory, if there's a case in our neighborhood, or if it starts to come much closer to where we are, because there were cases in Chengdu, but we live slightly outside. And I, to be honest, can't remember the third one now.
Yes,
but
sure.
There was 3 criteria that we said, if these things happen, we leave.
Right.
And until that point, we stay. Because we were actually going crazy. We were putting Keziah to bed and debating for 4 hours about the best course of action and what to do for our daughter.
Yes. And you're very important. You have this precious little girl. I can imagine how you must have felt going through that situation. What was happening in your spiritual life while you had all this confusion going on?
I'll be honest. It felt like a very spiritually dark time for us. You know, we already, as we discussed earlier, we already struggled to have any kind of fellowship with other believers in person. And then with all this going on, you know, people are really freaking out. And the last thing that people are going to be willing to talk about is God and what he might think about this. So it was really difficult for us trying to maintain that faith and trusting him, because it did feel so dark around us.
You know, I think it was during this time when you were going through this that, Brian, you Skyped me asking for prayer.
Yes.
And I know at that point, the two of you were very much seeking some divine guidance. Mm-hmm. That was such a critical thing to do, because then you put into operation the prayer resources of all of your spiritual community. Mm. And things started happening after that.
Yes.
Can you assign a date to this now that we're talking about?
Yes. I would say we talked to you February 3rd. But it was really hard. Like, something that really strikes me is that we were actually talking to each other and saying, I don't hear Yahweh. I don't know what to do. Where is Yahweh?
I was going out walking my dog 2 or 3 times a day. He has to go out, so so we go for a walk, and through the entire walk of about 15 to 30 minutes, I was just talking to Yahweh very bluntly, saying, I am struggling to see what you want me to do. It was equal between staying and going.
Yes.
There was no logical decision that we could make. We had set up some guidelines, but even that we weren't 100% sure on. We needed his guidance, and I would go to him, during those times and other times as well, but specifically those times when I was on my own and quiet, just walking my dog, that I would talk to him and say, please show me, what do you want me to do? I know that there can only be one good choice here, but I do not know what it is, and I am struggling to hear you through all the noise of what's going on.
Yes, yes.
And then it was after about a week of praying like that, and obviously everyone here at Zion and all of our friends who were on the same page spiritually as us of praying, that things started to happen that showed us we need to go.
Yes. Now, that was very sudden from the standpoint of all your friends.
Yeah.
That was very sudden when you made that decision that you needed to go. Can you remember when that was?
Yes. That was February the 3rd at night after we put Keziah to bed. We looked online. We saw that the UK travel advisory had been changed to do not travel to China. And if you're in China, you should leave. And that's one of the criteria we put down. So we said, that's it.
And
So you essentially got a sign as to what to do.
Yep.
yes. And
Yes.
earlier that day, we had found out from our property manager that there was the first confirmed case in our neighborhood.
Wow.
And they were absolutely brilliant. They told us, you don't need to worry. Via CCTV, they were able to determine that we had not interacted with that person even in a very small way. So she said, our property manager said, don't worry, you're fine, but just so you know, there has been a confirmed case of coronavirus in your neighborhood.
So what you're saying is they had actually been watching you the whole time on CCTV and knew everywhere you went and knew you hadn't interacted. Friends, this is your future. And you've already experienced that, being watched continuously so they know everywhere you went.
Yes.
And we're able to access that information.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really quite profound, and we really ought to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So now during this time then, before you made this final decision, no doubt you were hearing horror stories. You were telling me about these mobile crematoriums that were going right to people's houses in order to cremate the dead bodies. Any other things that were happening that were alarming during that period?
Once it's really started getting bad, the requirement was I would end up getting checked at my front gate to our neighborhood. And then I would end up getting checked again at the supermarket. Before I could walk in, I had to have a mask. My temperature was checked before I was allowed to enter. Once I entered, got my groceries, when I came out, I was checked again. When I came back into my neighborhood, I was asked, where have you been? How long have you been out? That was all documented. And then I was checked again for my temperature, and then I was allowed back into my neighborhood.
So did you all go to the store together?
No, I would not allow that. It got to the point to where Ginny and Keziah, just because
We didn't go out.
they did not leave the house at all. We had, up to that point, been taking walks around our neighborhood to stretch our legs, and it got to the point where I decided that that is not necessarily the safest option.
You cannot keep a mask on a 2-year-old.
Yes.
So if they're requiring masks, she wouldn't wear it. She'd wear it for 5 minutes for the novelty fun, and then she'd just throw them off and take them off and throw them on the ground. And we're spending a fortune on children's-sized masks, and she just won't wear them.
So you must have been terrified that if you took her, they might take her away from you.
Yes, that was a possibility. That was a threat. Yes.
Yes. Wow. Getting back to February 3rd then, when you made this decision to leave, what happened from that point?
It was the evening after Kezi went to bed. I contacted my sister. So because we'd just done 3 weeks in Thailand and we'd had the beach holiday, etc., and paid for the medical and that, finances were tight. So that was part of our stay or go conversation every day.
Yes.
So what happened was I contacted my sister and I asked her. She loaned me £1,000 without even thinking about it. We bought tickets.
What is £1,000 in dollars?
Oh, about $1,300 now.
Yes.
And then we bought tickets for February the 5th. I've never bought tickets so fast in all my life. Normally I buy tickets 2 or 3 months in advance.
Wow.
It was very hard because we couldn't tell from the websites which flights were actually going or if they were just scheduled but not really going because they'd started shutting down airports. So in the end, we bought Thai Airways and we chose to go to Thailand because that was another part of the long-winded umming and ahhing because that's where I used to live. So I said to Brian, I have friends there that can help us. Finances are hard. I have friends that will not see us go hungry. And so we decided to go there, didn't we? So we bought tickets and then we ran around the whole house choosing things because we thought, well, we might not ever come back to China.
Yes.
So we had already been talking constantly.
Yeah, we had decided when all of the talks of should we stay or go, during all of that, we had started making decisions of what are things, in the event that we never come back, what are things that we cannot replace or cannot live without. Documents, important birth certificates,
Yes.
things like that, important documentation that we need wherever we go. Obviously some obvious things like photo albums, but then, having to make decisions of, what clothes are we taking? What basic necessities do we need to take with us that we might need wherever we go that, in case we don't come back?
Yes.
We had to look at this, even though at that time we still had no idea what this was going to look like. And we thought, we'll spend some time in Thailand and we'll probably come back. But we still treated it as though
It was the end.
It was the end and we would never see our home again.
Yes. Now, I think that's such an interesting point, and I would suggest this to people in these times that we're living in, to everybody do the same thing and get your home organized in such a way that you can very quickly get together the things that you absolutely must have, because we really don't know what is going to unfold as things move forward. That's an important thing for everybody really to think about, to get things organized so that you can grab those things that are most important and go if you have to.
What you need to do is have conversations and make sure that you know where all your paperwork is. I'm not being funny, but my sister gave Keziah for her birth a silver-plated box. Well, that's silver. We didn't know what financial position we're in, so we took it.
Yes.
So literally, we had just had conversations to death of what do we need. We need things that are money or can be money, things that cannot be replaced, like birth certificates and things like that. If we're in another country, you can't replace that stuff easily.
Right.
And then we talked about like what can we then choose beyond that? Yes. So then I said, for me, because I'm a mother, I said I didn't want to go without Keziah's baby book.
Wow.
That I'd been keeping.
Yes.
So, and it's okay to have those, to make those choices, but you need to have the conversation and know where they are. Because when it came down to it, I didn't need a go bag. It took me about 60 minutes to pack because we just went around the house and this in a suitcase, done.
You know what's so great about this, though, is that the two of you have such great communication between the two of you. And anybody, if that's not how it is in your family, you really need to get that going. Because in a crisis, being able to communicate together is just so very important. That communication is so important. One other thing that I'm observing is the importance of the fact that you had activated essentially your prayer support.
Yes.
And so all of this, while you were going through this, was being covered. And people were praying for you. And no doubt this was really affecting your decisions as you went along. So you had this all set for a trip on the 5th. On the 3rd, you decided to go, and you had actually a ticket to get out of the country for the 5th. Is that right?
Yeah. So we had bought the ticket. We had to be careful. So we bought the ticket with a layover in Bangkok because we didn't know what health quarantine regulations would have to meet. And then we had a layover one night, and then we had a second flight the next day on the 6th to go up to Chiang Mai, because that's quite a small city in a backwater and where I lived before. So we'd laid that out.
But this was a crazy time in China. The airlines were all going crazy. A lot of them were dropping routes to China at this time. So there must have been concern that maybe you might not even be able to get out.
Well, that was actually a major issue for us. We, on the morning of the 5th, after I had sent my dog to the kennels, he was taken care of. We sent my dog to the kennels. We were in a car, a private driver, someone that we personally knew that has regular work with her school. He picked us up at 11 a.m. and we started heading to the airport, about a 45-minute drive. To get to the airport, you're required to go on a toll road. And when we exited the toll road about a quarter mile from the airport terminal, we were stopped by the police for a random temperature check. And they checked my temperature. I was fine. They checked Keziah's temperature. She was fine. They checked Ginny's temperature, and she was slightly high. Now, again, going back to what we had said previously, in Celsius, they were stopping people and removing people to hospitals if their temperature arose to 37.3 degrees Celsius or higher. That is only about 99.4 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes.
Still very low. Ginny's was right there at that 37.4 degrees Celsius. They pulled her out of the car, would not allow me to exit the vehicle, because obviously my first reaction is, I'm getting out as well.
Yes,
what are you doing?
Yes.
They would not let me just step out of the vehicle.
This must have been an incredibly tense moment.
But I think that's why I was running hot. Because like you say, we were going to the airport. We were scared.
Yes.
This was also the first time we'd been outside in a week.
Wow.
Myself and Keziah.
And
So we had no idea. The roads were dead. It's like the zombie apocalypse scene.
Wow.
And I think I was just literally in knots, and my temperature was high.
Yes.
Probably just anxiety and stress.
Yes. Oh, wow. I think we can totally picture that, and that is amazing. Having the police stop you, having her get out, and them forcing you to stay in the vehicle, I just can't even imagine what that must have felt like.
Yeah, it was really horrible. The driver, they told the driver, since to make sure that we couldn't then run off, they had the driver get out of the vehicle as well. Again, since we knew him, he was advocating very hard for us. We had a thermometer with us. We were begging the man to allow us to use our thermometer to double check his numbers. Sure enough, we did, and it was just a little bit lower, just beneath that threshold. And so he, went away to a supervisor, talked with his supervisor for a couple agonizing minutes, came back, and rather in an annoyed tone, told us to get back in the car and be on our way.
Wow.
At that point, we were just thanking Yahweh for the rest of that quarter mile until
Really,
we got out.
I bet. It's so interesting because I see this is how Yahweh works so much. It's in these tiny little things, but you have the series of all the right things happening in order to get you to where He wants you to be. And in your story, I see this so much, just all these to make it go your way. So you managed to get on the plane, right? Was there any trouble with that?
We had a bit of a long time, so we didn't know how long it would take, or if we had, again, quarantine health check stops. We didn't know. So we arrived quite early, and we packed alcohol spray and hand sanitizer, and before we let Keziah sit down, we went to a restaurant to get coffee and wait, and we wouldn't let her sit down until we'd sprayed the table. And it's funny because even when we then got to Thailand, Kezi was saying there's lots of sick people, because I constantly was saying to her there's lots of sick people, keep your hands to yourself, you cannot touch anything, let mummy wipe it down first. And that it's the pressure is there, but it was funny because we sat down at the table. It was literally like, wasn't it? With the coffee.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was awful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And the thing is, I really want to say that we didn't float through it saying like, oh, know that Yahweh's got this. Like, no,
Yes.
It was just in the flesh. It was in the flesh feelings of the anxiety and the panic and the stress was up here. And in hindsight, I can say I know that Yahweh had it, but I can't say that I was some kind of really,
saint in the moment.
Yes, not at all.
Sometimes when everything is okay, people sort of feel like you have to have faith. And therefore, if you have any human feelings about things, you don't have faith. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, you are a human being. You are going to have human feelings when you're threatened. Mm-hmm. That's a response that's built into you for a reason. And so you are going to have those things. You're going to have fear, anxiety, confusion. All those things happen to believers. Mm-hmm. And that was your experience, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, you were moving along in this whole process.
Yes.
So you get through this time, you board the plane. Were there a lot of people on the plane?
Yes, actually. There was, which that was also just leading to our paranoia as well, because it was a packed plane. We had some little hope that maybe it would be rather empty, but no, it was fully packed.
Yeah. It was packed full of Chinese people fleeing the same way we were.
Yeah, so people were fleeing, lots of people.
Yeah, and it was a direct flight. Chengdu is a tier 1 city in China, but it's still very small. It has a tiny little airport.
Yeah, and tier 1 just basically means that they have a lot of the amenities that you might expect, decent hospitals, access to a lot of Western amenities, things like that.
So it's still a very small airport, and it's not very many places you can go direct. You can only, you have to go up to Beijing and go out from there most of the time.
Right.
But that's the other reason why we chose Thailand, because it was direct from Chengdu to Thailand. We did not want to stop somewhere else in China.
And you already had friends and so forth in Thailand,
so
right? So
it was just like the perfect fit, really.
Yes, and you'd just been to Thailand
we just been to Thailand,
right? Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. What did it feel like to look out the window and see yourself taking off? What did that feel like?
Well, I'll be honest, there was mixed emotions for me personally. Obviously relief that, okay, at least we're now leaving this system for a country that certainly had some cases, but far fewer than China did. Even far fewer than our city did.
Yes.
So there was some relief there, but there was also some anxiety as well. Obviously, we're on a crowded plane for the next 3.5 hours with a lot of people we do not know where they've been, and if they have it, that's of course a possibility. And part of what made me quite anxious was we were sat in the middle of the plane, and there were also rows with aisles on the other side, and there was a child, maybe 10 or 11, with his mother, just within eye shot of us, who about halfway through the flight started vomiting. And our first mind goes to, does he have it?
Yes.
And he's just there.
Right.
And so that was, but then we ended up watching him throughout the flight, and every time there was some bumps or, we would, start to turn or bank, that's when he would start being sick. So we realized this must just be air sickness. But still, it was to that point that anytime we heard someone cough or sneeze, we would just hold our breath and just hope it would pass.
It was awful because we bought proper respirators from China. We bought it because it had like double elastic, very thick elastic bands around the top. And so Kezi couldn't really get it off. So she basically cried for 3.5 hours, and I had to sit next to her crying because she wanted to take off the mask and she couldn't take it off.
So a very tense flight for everybody. Was everybody wearing their mask on the flight?
Yes.
So really this no doubt would have looked very bizarre to people in the West had they just even had a snapshot of what it looked like inside that plane. 3.5 hours of this, right? Mm-hmm. Wow. What happened when you landed?
That was pretty straightforward. Yeah. We got into Bangkok. We went through immigration. They obviously knew where we had come from.
They took our temperatures, and that was it.
That was it.
Because Thailand hadn't had many cases. Nowhere it hadn't really broken out of China yet. So It wasn't too bad, was it?
So in Thailand, there still weren't a lot of cases.
No.
So you must have felt like you really had escaped this monster that was closing in on you.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
It was sweet relief, wasn't it? We got out the airport and took that mask off and took it off Kezi, and we all just went,
Wow.
wasn't it?
I think I'm pretty sure I said after I took the mask off outside, I've never been so happy to smell smog. just to finally get that off and just feel a little bit of peace for the first time in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
and then we went to the hotel and we had dinner and we had like chicken fried rice, Kezi's favorite.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, cool, and the holiday begins. Okay,
Yes.
we're here. It was literally like 10 years rolled off my life, and
Amazing.
and because we'd said to Kezi that we were on holiday, that we were
Yes.
going on holiday. So we told her that there are lots of sick people, but she didn't know anything about that. So we just would tell her, oh, you're on holiday. So she was just asking to go swimming and do this and do that.
Yeah.
So we stayed overnight one night, and then we went back to the airport the next day. We just did the same thing with the masks, just to be sure, but it was only a domestic flight. So it was a different terminal, and we flew up to Chiang Mai. And then we stayed in a hotel that I booked, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here you are at a hotel then, in a city in Thailand. What would be the date on that?
This would have been the 7th at this point where we reached our destination in Chiang Mai.
No. And then this is like pretty much on me at that point, because I speak Thai and it was my community and I was the reason, it was my choice to go there.
Right.
So we booked into a hotel and I just hit Facebook and hit up all my friends that had been there. And when I used to work there, I worked at a Christian school and most of the people I know were Christian missionaries. So I just was asking, who's got a house that we can rent? We couldn't even afford to do hotel living for a month. Like, that's ridiculous. It would have been far too much money. And we were wiped from the December trip.
Oh, yes.
So one of my friends came back that I taught with. She's Canadian. Taught with her for a long time, Christian. She owned a Christian bookshop. So we moved into a Christian bookshop. She lived above it. It was like a 5-story, very skinny 5-story townhouse. So we lived above the Christian bookshop, didn't we? And Kezi.
Was this very difficult for you to find this place to go and
no.
to move in there?
No.
No.
Easy doors.
No.
We were just, it was easy. Wasn't it?
When everything started, like her friends pretty much welcomed us with open arms and were very eager to help. We had obviously her friend who let us stay in her house because she wasn't using it. She was in Canada. She let us stay there. Another one of her friends, that same night that we moved into the Christian bookstore, gave us towels and blankets and toys for Keziah and all sorts.
She even picked us up from the hotel, so we didn't even have to get a taxi. Like, everyone was bending over backwards to help us. But we were, I have to say, like, we'd say it's all really easy, but we were really, at that point, refugees, and all we had was what was in our suitcase.
Right.
And if it hadn't have been for people, like, reaching out and donating money and helping us to find somewhere to live and do all of those things, we would have been in trouble. But it was just it was smooth sailing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I know that you put up a GoFundMe page in order to get some funds. Of course, we put that in our newsletter too. How did that work out? Did you get anything to help you?
Yeah, that worked out spectacularly. When it was all said and done, we had originally set our goal to $400, which would have just been like a minimum to help with just some initial costs with traveling. We ended up actually exceeding that a couple times over, and it ended up being, I think, right around $1,500 that we ended up getting in total.
It was amazing, really, because I told you that I borrowed from my sister $1,300.
Yes.
But she needed that because she'd already booked like somebody to come and change her boiler. That was like, she'd been saving that for months to buy a new boiler.
Yes.
So she said, I can give it to you, but I need it back in a week.
Wow.
And so we got back from the GoFundMe enough to pay back my sister.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. I know some of our people at Zion contributed to that.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And
in fact, they contributed the most. And honestly, like the people of faith, the ministry partners that contributed financially, and then the Christians that I knew in Chiang Mai, just everybody bent over backwards and made it smooth sailing.
certainly in our Zion community, we have a messianic perspective, but we love our Christian brothers and sisters as well. And it just is an example of how all people that truly belong to Yeshua have that in common. And the difference you see is the love for one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can tell what's real. And that's what happened there.
Oh, yeah, because I had friends from school that then followed. We were one of the first to make the decision to leave. And then within like 3 or 4 days, most everybody had left. Of course, they're not believers and they didn't have the same support. And most of them are really financially struggling now and really not in a good way, and have lived out of a suitcase for 2 months, haven't had a place to settle or, being provided with houses. Honestly, my story, our story compared to their story is like night and day, really.
Yes.
So Yahweh's hand has provided for us.
So
Definitely.
when all this happened and you ended up in Thailand, and then finally you had this place to stay in this Christian bookstore, he had truly brought you on eagle's wings from that place to that place. What was that like?
For sure. I mean, obviously our reception was a huge indicator of that. But even beyond that, after we had been in Chiang Mai for no more than probably 3 or 4 days, we received notification from some of her colleagues still in Chengdu that the city had been put on lockdown, that all the apartment complexes, people were not allowed to leave their homes. You were given passes. One person per day could leave once per day to get essentials, and that was it. And even in a lot of places, that was completely stopped. Where we were living, people were not allowed to leave their homes at all for any reason. The guards would supply you with food. They would knock on your door, leave a package of food at your door. You would open it, grab it, go back inside. There was literally no movement where we were, which would have been too much.
Yes.
For us.
Yes. Had you not got out when you did, could you have just got out a little later?
In this instance, no. I don't see that being an option.
I remember you gave me a Skype where you said, we just got here and they have now canceled this flight.
Yes. The flight that we took, the route and the flight we took was cancelled.
Canceled 1 or 2 days after.
Yeah.
The route by which you got out of China shut down right after you got out.
We were one of the last flights, yes.
What did you think about that in terms of your prayers and everybody praying for you?
We just knew that Yahweh provided, and I mean, he genuinely did provide an escape at the right time and at one of the last possible times.
Yes, he just made it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we thank him for that.
Yes.
We greatly thank him for that. So you're in place then at the bookstore in Thailand, and we said that was what day?
So we moved into bookshop at February the 8th.
February the
Yeah.
8th, you moved into the bookshop. Now, how long were you there?
We were there just under a month. Because when you enter Thailand, you're allowed, as a foreigner, a 1-month tourist visa upon entry.
Yes.
So we entered on, what was that?
We entered on the 5th.
The 5th. So we had until March 5th.
I see.
So we got to the Christian bookstore on the 8th and realized, well, we have a month here. We actually, for the first time, kind of relaxed a little bit and kept track of things, but were able to just breathe.
Wow. Reminds me of the Israelites fleeing from Egypt.
Yes.
So from one stop to another, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had a chance to kind of catch your breath and a place where you were safe. So it was kind of an oasis for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We relaxed and went swimming, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we were happy to be in a house, not a hotel, because we could cook. And so we just went shopping and cooked food and went swimming and enjoyed ourselves.
As the time passed, like you were there for a month, at some point you must have said, oh, well, we're sure we don't have the virus, right?
Yeah. Well, we had a little bit of a scare, I guess you could say. After maybe 4 days that we'd been there, Ginny fell very ill, and Keziah fell very ill, and I was sort of waiting for like my time to come, as it were. We attribute it to maybe some food poisoning. Within a day, their symptoms went away, and they had no fevers. There was no coughing, but it was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was not my cooking. It was not.
No. Yeah, to specify that. Yeah,
I'm sure it wasn't.
No. Definitely not Jenny's cooking.
Yes,
No.
yes. I think all of us can imagine that, because here in America now we have cases escalating, and I notice myself, if you start even having some sniffles or something, you're wondering.
Yeah.
So I can imagine all that. Obviously, I'm interviewing you right now. How did you end up here?
Okay, so basically we were very happy and relaxed and on holiday again and doing all the things that Kezi likes to do. And then after about 2 weeks, the whole stay and go thing started again, because we're looking at 2 weeks has gone by. There looks to be no signs. So then we're thinking, well, the expiry date of our tourist visa is coming up in Thailand. And I only had 1 page left in my passport. So we're about stamps. So we then started again, put Keziah to bed, discuss our options all over again. It's really emotionally exhausting.
Yes, I'm sure it must be. I know at a certain point, Brian, you had Skyped me. I forget what the date was, but talking about this now and saying, well, is there any possibility if we come back to the States that we could stay with you? From that, of course, I knew at that point that that's what you were thinking about. Yeah. And of course, we did give you a total green light on that. How did you finally decide to do that?
Well, I would like to mention in regards to what you just said, when we had talked when we were still in China, I remember I'd asked you that same question of, can we come to you? And you had said, sure, if you could quarantine before that point, that would be preferred.
Yes.
And I think that was a big reason why Yahweh had guided us to Thailand, because that was a place where we could quarantine ourselves well beyond the recommended 2 weeks.
Right.
So that way, when it did come down to making a decision of, well, do we stay in Thailand or do we go, we knew that, well, we'd quarantined, we were not ill, obviously, and that we were free of the virus and would not harm anyone here.
I remember telling you, if what you need to do is come here directly to do that, but if possible, it would be better if you could quarantine first.
Correct.
Here at Zion, we believe that Yahweh is totally in control. But we also believe that we need to do what the scriptures tell us. We need to do what is practical. I think part of what balances that out is watching to see what Yahweh is doing. So if you could have come here but not quarantined, then we would have accepted that he was in control and everything was fine. But it was really so much better for you to come here with us all knowing, including yourselves, that you had gotten out of China without having the virus. And what a wonderful thing. We just really praise Yahweh, how he guided you through all of this. Even when you were feeling confused, he wasn't confused.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
He had a direct plan, and all of this became more and more obvious as each step along the way, it worked in your favor.
Yes.
Also, it's interesting because you said, if that whole thing about if you can quarantine, please do so. And like I said, we were very comfortable to go to Thailand. Thailand's my second home.
Yes.
Maybe even my first home. I'm not sure. But it was okay to do that. But it was very interesting because things were escalating and we were watching the news. And actually, if we'd have tried to fly to the States from China, they introduced that thing where it was like mandatory 14-day quarantine or possibly mandatory 14-day quarantine when you land here, and America had gone on massive alert.
Yes.
So then it was brilliant because when we came to fly, we flew from Thailand, having not been in China, because they asked, have you been in China for the last 14 days? We could say no, and we just sailed through San Fran airport, didn't we? And immigration was just not an issue at all. So I'm really thankful that we actually went to Thailand first.
It was
because it made coming into the States really easy.
It's just so amazing looking back on all these little details. And there's so many more that couldn't be included, I'm sure, in where they just all turned in your favor, which really shows his hand on the whole thing, even in times when you didn't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I think, such an important thing that we all need to realize here in these last days, that if we belong to him and we are depending on him, that whether it feels like he's there or not, whether it feels like he's doing anything or not, if we are just willing to submit ourselves to him, he will be there, and he will, through his Spirit, be directing you in what you do.
Yeah.
Does that seem right to you?
100%.
That's what I experienced.
Yeah.
Yes. When did you come to America?
We landed in America. I think we landed on the same day we left. And
March
we left
4th. March 4th?
No, I think it was the 5th. I think we landed on the 5th.
You did. You landed
Okay.
March 5th because I picked you up at the airport.
Yeah.
Yes, I picked you
All
up
these
at the airport.
time zones are so confusing, and
Oh,
it's
no
like
doubt.
I feel like we've just been through the ringer for 2 months.
The whole thing is just an amazing story.
I would like to add as well, when we landed in San Francisco, Ginny, that was the first time that Ginny had entered with her new marriage visa
Yes.
and her green card. So we, there's some extra steps you have to take when you go through immigration. When we got to the immigration officer, we told him, hey, this is the situation. He said, okay, no problem. He said, you, sir, speaking to me, need to stay over here. You're clear to go through to get your bags. She needs to come with me. It might be a couple hours. So I just get Keziah, because she's an American citizen. Let's get her. We go get the bags, and I just stand there waiting. Couldn't have been more than 5 minutes later. Ginny comes around the corner. Everything's good. Let's get our bags and get to our flight for Austin. And it was just absolutely insane. Here we, again, just another situation where we're prepared for a couple hour wait, and Yahweh just opened the door for us. And it was a 5-minute chat with the immigration officer for her, and on
Not
through.
even. They just they said, put your documents here. So I put my documents there and then took a seat. And 5 minutes later, they called my name and gave me my passport, and I went out the door.
No problems at all getting into the country. And of course, at that point, a lot of people were concerned about getting into the country.
Yes. Well, and it wasn't very long after that we ended up seeing on the news that a lot of the major ports like San Francisco, Atlanta, Chicago suddenly got hit with a wave of international travelers that was leading to massive delays within immigration. And again, Yahweh's timing, we managed to beat that and get to the United States before that huge wave. And just another step of the way where Yahweh's provision was so obvious.
Yeah.
You know what I see in that is being ahead of the curve. You see, friends, if you obey Yahweh and you take that step before everybody else is taking it, you're ahead of the curve and things can go your way. If you hesitate too long, if you had hesitated at any point here, it would have totally nixed the whole deal, right?
Yes. And that's something that is really, it's funny because I could tell you all of the different, like when we're in China, do we fly to Hawaii? Do we quarantine in Hawaii? Do we go to Thailand? When we're in Thailand, do we renew the visa at Burma? The number of times that we just had pointless conversations for hours and hours, and to the point where it's like looking at each other going, can you not talk to me about that? Or I just want to watch some TV. Can you just stop?
Right.
Like just going over the motions over and over. And it's funny because actually in the end, all we did was like follow the dates on our passports or just like, it was so simple and clear cut. And we were ahead of the curve.
Yes.
All the time, like we left before they cancelled the flight, and then and so on and so forth. It's funny because the amount of conversation we had, but funny as well because all those conversations, it's like just practicing communication, and you have to have them because it's stress ventilation.
Yes, definitely.
So we're really using each other as a sounding board.
And I also would like to add as a warning to people in that if you don't prepare and act when you need to, you can have dire consequences. There was a gentleman that Ginny works with, and his wife is Chinese, and he has 2 children who are also Chinese or half Chinese. They have dual citizenship according to the United States. They have a Chinese as well as American passport, his children. But the Chinese government does not recognize that American passport.
Yes.
And particularly for the males, children, if you're a boy, you're not allowed to leave the country unless you literally get a document from the government that says you're allowed to leave. Even if you have a passport, you still need this document. And her colleague had dragged his feet and not gone through with that. By the time he realized that he wanted that document so that him and his family could leave for America, all the government offices were closed.
Yes.
He was not able to secure that document and was forced to stay against his will, really, because had they left, he would have been forced to leave his son behind.
Yes.
Which obviously is not a choice.
Right.
And he's spent 2 months in total lockdown. He said that things have got a bit better in China now,
Wow.
but they spent 2 months to the point where like nobody can leave. So he's got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old in a little tiny apartment, 2-bedroom apartment in a high-rise building of 40 stories. So, you're going in the lift and who's even pressed those buttons before you? Like, it's just the risk of going out. And he did not go out for 2 months.
Wow. But you landed here.
Yeah.
And we picked you up, brought you here to Zion headquarters. Today, when we're recording this interview, it's the 21st. So it wasn't very long at all that you've been here. So at this point in time, you've been here with us at Zion for about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
How has that all worked out for you?
It's been brilliant. Obviously, everyone here has been very receptive to us and has helped us get on our feet. We have a place to stay. We have foods. We even have an automobile. So everything has, again, Yahweh's provision. Everything's fallen into place.
This is just an encouraging story. Even though it's filled with so much chaos you had to deal with, no doubt, some fear sometimes, concerns, sleepless nights, all of those things. But we have a very happy ending here.
Yeah.
And Yahweh was with you through all of that. Do you have any final comments, things maybe that you would want other people who are sort of facing a place of that similar confusion over all of this that you had been in? What advice would you have for them?
It's funny because I don't necessarily think that everybody has to leave or go somewhere.
Right.
So, actually the advice at the moment is to stay at home.
Yes.
And we understand and we know that by doing the traveling that we did, we're putting ourselves and our daughter at risk. And that's why we had so much debate about whether it's better to stay or to go. But ultimately, we felt like we couldn't stay in China because in China, they closed our embassies and we had no consular protection. So we could have been arrested for jaywalking and we wouldn't have had anyone to help us.
Yes.
It could have been totally unrelated. We had no protection. So we felt like we had our backs against the wall. But I should say that now we're here. We're not running around in circles. We're not going out. We have been here. I don't think me and Keziah have left. The area for at least a week or so to go out. We haven't gone out. We haven't even gone shopping. So, I think it's really important to know that there's a time when you have to take that risk and there's a time when that risk is not worth it.
I think this is so good what you're saying, because we're not telling everybody pick up and go somewhere else. Right. What we're telling them is to pray a lot and make good decisions, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because, keeping in mind, our story is quite unique in that we were in a country that is not our own, surrounded by a language that we do not speak, under a government that is capable of quarantining 50 million plus people at one time and successfully achieve that.
Yes.
So there was a host of different factors at play that really required us to leave
Right.
and to seek a place of safety. For people that are in their home countries, you don't necessarily have that same those same difficulties, those same struggles, and I think that needs to also be considered when dealing with this situation that the entire world is now in.
I think it's a tremendous lesson too regarding the remnant exodus that's coming up.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh.
When I was literally about to say that I think that it's people need to think about that, because actually the whole time that we were doing this whole journey, we were talking, weren't we, about like, I wonder if this is what the Exodus feels like. Oh, like we literally talked to each other and went, oh, we don't need a go bag. We know what's important for us.
Yes.
Or okay, so when we go to the Exodus, I guess we'll just pretty much pack what we packed this time. Like it felt like a dry run.
Yes.
And when I landed, when we landed and you picked us up, I said to you within about an hour that I wanted to do an interview and tell people that it is really important that they are thinking these things through for the preparation. And it's not the stereotypical like apocalypse film scenarios of having go bags and filling your pantry with food. It's about really being able to communicate with people and getting real to people and saying, if I get sick, don't come to a hospital and take care of me. Stay at home with my daughter. What are my priorities? And what am I willing to endure? And where is my line? So if somebody tells me I have to do A, B, and C, would I do that? Would that be acceptable to me? Like actually asking real questions to yourself. And
being able to move very quickly when that time comes. Had we dragged our feet, as we've already explained, we very easily could have been trapped there. When the call does go out, when Yahweh says it's time to move, regardless of the situation, that means it's time to move. And dragging your feet could have horrific consequences.
You know, one thing that comes to my mind about that is when the time came, you had all the documents you needed to be able to travel. Even your green card to get into the United States, and you had been working on that for like 7 years before you got it. And I think right now what I want to say to a lot of our listeners is make sure you have a passport, because this could come on you where you need to move suddenly. You need to have documents to be able to do that, and you're not going to get them at the last minute. So everybody, please listen, act now, get a passport.
I would say, yes, that, and also make sure, like what Brian and I have done and have always done because of living overseas, is we actually bought one of those concertina folders that can zip up and down, and we always have in the same place like degree certificates, birth certificates, those like legal documents and banking information and copies of my passport, always copies of relevant recent like current visas to countries that we need. All of that is always in there. We also know, I know it sounds silly, but I can tell you Brian's favorite underwear. I can tell you his favorite clothes, what needs to go when. Like I would be destroyed if I didn't bring this t-shirt. It's okay to have those feelings of like, I really want to take this photo album, but you have to do it now so you know, where is my line? What will I leave behind? What will I not leave behind? And we had countless conversations about our dog, what to do about the dog. We're still having conversations about the dog because the dog's in kenneling, so that's not resolved. We still talk about that, but the thing is, we talk about it, and we're constantly saying everything goes under the preface of, if I don't have it or if I don't do it, will I die, or will some serious harm occur to myself, my daughter, or my husband? And that's my line. So it's, if it's like, it's just constantly like thinking that through. I know it sounds awful, but the more ducks you have a line in your head, then, actioning once it's in your head and you've made decisions is really easy. But it's actually the making the decisions and saying, I'm not willing to put up with this, or this is a situation I cannot tolerate, or this is a piece of paperwork, or this is something I need, I'll keep it together. And, that's the kind of thing. Like I know it sounds awful, but I really feel like I need a will. Great. Write one today, not tomorrow. It's that kind of making sure that actually your decisions in your head and then coming to action, it's very easy.
I think, sometimes we have these thoughts that come up, oh, I should do this. Friends, if you ever thought like that, do it.
Mm.
Because that really can be Yahweh preparing you for something in the future. And maybe it isn't. You know, maybe if you have a thought come into your head, well, I need to write a will, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to die.
No, it's just.
But it does resolve certain things for you
Yeah.
to do it. So don't let fear keep you from doing things that Yahweh's telling you to do. Just go ahead and do them and leave it up to him, because he's there and he's looking out for you.
One quick thing I would like to add in regards to your statements, to imploring people to get a passport and be ready on that level. You know, as our friend had experienced, he was stuck. He didn't do that at the right time. When we came into the country, we missed the flood of people. If suddenly the world reaches a point where everyone's thinking we need to leave somewhere, getting a passport is not going to be something that would normally only take a couple weeks. You could be looking at months.
Yes.
Due to backups in the system. You take care of this stuff when the waters are calm, you won't have issues. But if you wait too long, you can get stuck.
We have to realize, and I think right now is a really good time to talk about this, that when the crisis comes, everything is different. It's all turned upside down. So when it's not a crisis for the thing you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. And we're going to keep seeing this. We're going to have a wave of these things like this coronavirus over the next decade. We're going to keep having these things happen where we have a shock to the global system. This is all taking us somewhere. So please take this to heart, friends, and look at this example of what has happened with Brian and Ginny and act on it. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story. And we're so glad to have you with us here at our Zion community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, friends. How'd you like it? Wasn't it a wonderful interview and inspiring story? Doesn't it remind us of how much our Heavenly Father cares for us, those who care for Him? It reminds me of Psalm 91. I think this psalm is so appropriate right now, and I'm going to read the entire thing for you. It says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yahweh, He is my refuge and my fortress, my Elohim in whom I trust. For He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers. Under His wings you will take refuge. His faithfulness is your shield and rampart. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. Because you have made Yahweh your refuge and the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall happen to you, neither shall any plague come near your dwelling. For He will put His angels in charge of you to guard you in all your ways. They will bear you up in their hands so that you won't dash your foot against a stone." I believe in this promise. This comes to those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. This is not a promise for everyone. This is a promise for those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. This particular psalm of David is actually picking up on the verses that we find in Exodus 19, where Yahweh reminds us that he brought us, Israel, his nation, out of Egypt, out of slavery on eagle's wings. And his whole point about that is that if we will obey his voice, if we will keep his covenant, then we will be in this special position with him, in this place as his special possession out of all the earth. This is what David was thinking about when he's writing about him covering us with his feathers. Isn't that encouraging? And isn't it encouraging to know this is not just poetry? We just heard a modern day example of the truth of this. This is what happens in a crisis. I know because I've been through more than one of them. And I know if we are in that secret place of the Most High, even though we may have fears, we may have confusion, ordinary human feelings, but we're relying on him. He is there. He is our refuge. And things come together in amazing ways. And that's what we've seen here. So the reason I'm telling you this is because we are in a time of crisis right now in the world. And really, every day is just a new nightmare. Don't let that make you think that Yahweh isn't there. He is there. He loves you. And he's with you. None of this surprises him. He knows all about everything that's happening. And he has a plan for you. But you know what? I think one of the reasons these things come is because people need to cry out to him. They need to be reminded sometimes of what is truly important. You know, it's very easy for us when things are good just to concentrate on the things that are our own interests. But as soon as we start to feel threatened, what do? We start looking up, don't we? When there is no help, we look to the only help. And you know what? Right now, millions of people are doing this around the world. Many people, even who have never known the true God, are crying out to him right now. And this is a fantastic opportunity to help people. And because we are secure, then we can bring a message of hope to them and introduce them to the only real hope in this dying world. Well, there's another use of this scripture in the Bible, and I want to share that to you. This is when Yeshua had gone off into the wilderness to pray for 40 days, fasting. It says the devil took him into the holy city. He set him on the pinnacle of the temple. And he said to him, now, just a minute, he set him on the pinnacle of the temple. How would you feel at that moment? Just think of it. If the devil actually moved you and put you up in this place on the top of a temple, would that shake you? Would that much power perhaps shake your faith? Just a thought. This is what he said to Yeshua. If you are the son of Elohim, throw yourself down. For it's written, he'll put his angels in charge of you. And on their hands, they will bear you up so that you don't dash your foot against a stone. Psalm 119, right? Here's the devil challenging Yeshua to put his faith in the Scripture. This would be a great way for Yeshua to prove his faith, wouldn't it? Just to jump and let the angels pick him up. Scripture says that's what would happen. Don't you think that's foolish? Yet a lot of people think like this. That's Satan, friends, talking to you. When he is calling you to some reckless action in order to prove your faith. This is never Yahweh that does this. Never. Well, let's take a look at this. What did Yeshua say to him? This is his answer. Again, it is written, you shall not test Adonai, your Elohim. He didn't fall into the trap. He had faith. He didn't have to prove his faith, especially to the devil. He based his actions not on bravado, but on the Torah. He quoted the Torah to the devil. Deuteronomy 6:16. You shall not put Yahweh, your Elohim, to the test. You see, it's a sin to engage in reckless behavior, thinking that Yahweh will save your bacon, your turkey bacon. That's wrong. Because it's disobedience to a commandment. This is where the Torah comes in and balances things out for us. You see, we need this balance. You shall not put Yahweh, your Elohim, to the test. Reckless behavior is not faith. It is unnecessarily testing Yahweh. And we shouldn't do that. It's a sin. So, avoiding reckless behavior is not a lack of faith. It's obedience to the commandments. Yeshua followed this commandment, so should you. So when people say to you, well, because I've got faith, I don't need to do all that stuff to keep myself safe from the virus, because Yahweh is going to take care of me no matter what happens. You know, maybe he will. But are you keeping the commandment doing that? Or are you being reckless and therefore putting Yahweh to the test? We all need to learn the lesson from Yeshua right now as to where this thing balances out. Very, very important, friends. We have nothing to be afraid of if we walk with him, if we dwell in the secret place of the Most High. And certainly, this inspiring interview is a great example of that. Real life story of how this thing works. We don't need to be dismayed or confused. Yeah, we might be confused for a little while, but he sorts it out. Yahweh, your Elohim, is with you wherever you go. We certainly see that in this story. Even when we don't know he's there. Even when we wonder, where are you? Because I'm really in trouble right now. No, he's there. If you put your trust in him, he's there, and he's going to show himself to you. So this is a great opportunity for us right now, with these unusual events going on in the world, to draw closer to our Father, to know him better, and to get to feel what that's like, being hidden in his wings, having his feathers wrapped around us, and what it's all about, having him with us wherever we go. Our next message, our next special meeting that we'll be having come up in a little more than a week from now, is our first message of the new year. Friends, the stage has been set for a really different new year. And we're going to be talking about that to kind of set the pace for the year that's coming. And one of the things we're going to talk about is, where did the Wuhan coronavirus pandemic come from? And why should you care? We need to understand what's really going on, because this is part of a bigger picture. And we need to understand that. So I invite everybody to come. And these special meetings that we're making these available to all interested persons. All they need to do is come and sign up and register at zion.net to become a free partner, and they'll be able to see these, because this is so critical right now. People are really needing this information from the scriptures. So take the opportunity to invite people that you know, people you care about, your friends, to sign up and take in these special messages. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Let's close our time together with a prayer. Father, we're coming to you tonight, and we just want to praise you. Your ways are so far beyond human understanding, and we are just totally in awe of who you are, Father. You are just so incredibly amazing. We want to thank you, Father, for how faithful you were to your covenant in the case of Brian and Ginny, and how totally present you were with them as they went through this amazingly quick change that came about. A time where critical decisions were really needed, multiple decisions. And Father, how you made it possible before the crisis came, and how you then were there at each step along the way in order to deliver your servants out of the hand of the enemy. Father, I want to pray tonight for all of you people, wherever they may be throughout the earth. Many very upset and disturbed right now. A lot of very, very difficult decisions are facing so many people today. And they're crying out to you. They're looking towards you for answers. Father, if we can bless any of these people with what we have, we just pray that you will bring them and feed them with your message. And we ask you, Father, to be with them, everyone that cries out to you, to be with them. I think of the book of Joel that says, everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh will be saved. Father, I know people are calling out to you, and I just pray for not only the salvation of their spirit, that they might have eternal life, but that they might be delivered from the pestilence that is quickly infecting people around the world. Protect your people, Father, I pray, from this, just as you have Brian and Ginny, and give them the knowledge, the confidence that you are there. And Father, may this be a time that even though we're in a position of not being physically together with one another because of the Leviticus protocol, which is based on your word as to what to do in times like this. Yet we are together, Father, in the Spirit, and we are able to come together through the internet to encourage one another, to build one another up. And so, Father, through this, I pray that you might draw us closer together as your people, because things are rapidly changing, and we need to change too. We need to be able to adapt to the things that are happening. We need you to help us do that, Father. Tonight, we want to give you glory, honor, and praise, Father, for who you are, that you are far above the wisest of this world. You know everything from the beginning to the end. You have a plan that includes all your people. Help us, Father, to walk in your plan and in your ways. We pray now, Father, through the name of your Son, our Savior, Yeshua Messiah. Amen. Thanks again for being with us tonight for this special presentation. And now here is Abigail.
I want to thank you all for being with us tonight for this last Sabbath meeting of the current Biblical Hebrew year. We want to invite you all to join us again for the next Sabbath meeting, which will be in the new Hebrew year, for a special presentation. Shabbat Shalom, and may you all be blessed.